What did you sell your first bottle of wine for?
As in the price of the first?
Yeah.
Well, the first bottle of wine is Penner-Ash.
Let's do both.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really hard. Because I've been in the industry now, this is my 25th year, and so, I've worked at Stag's Leap Wine Cellars, selling Cabernets pretty expensively.
And that was in California?
That was down in California. Came up to Oregon and worked for Rex Hill, and at the time Rex Hill.
What year was that?
In 1988.
88?
Yeah, so Rex Hill's Pinots were selling on average anywhere from 15 to I'd say it was 25 at the time, dollars a bottle, and then Penner-Ash, when we released our first wine, which was in 1998, we were selling it for $49 a bottle.
Boy, big jump, huh?
Big jump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you give me like a 2-minute kind of a history of how, what siren called you to the wine industry and winemaking?
It was a combination of things. I think that I've always had a love of agriculture. My grandparents owned a farm down in Fresno, California, and they did grow Thompson seedless, which were table grapes. And so some of my memories of agriculture, the smell of the diesel, the fresh fruit, the sun, the dirt, I love the aromas that you saw there, but I also loved the idea of working with plants. And so my first dream was actually to go into agriculture, maybe via botany, be a botanist of some sort. And so I actually pursued that degree after being encouraged by, I worked at the Smithsonian Institute when I was in high school. And so they really encouraged me to focus on botany also. And so they pretty much recommended I go to UC Davis, University of California at Davis. So I pursued a degree at University of California at Davis in botany, and discovered about 3 years into it that really my love was not to be in the lab studying plants. I really wanted to physically be outside and working with plants. And so it kind of naturally transpired that viticulture was interesting, being as Napa was so close by. And I had a friend at Davis who actually got me my first job in the wine industry. He said, well, why don't you try it, see if you like it.
What was that first job?
My first job was working on the crush deck at Domaine Chandon on the graveyard shift.
Holy cow.
And it was a lot of fun. you're all of 19, 20 years old, and you're working from 3 p.m. to 7 a.m., and you watch the sunset and you watch the sunrise, and you have a pretty good time out there. So I just really enjoyed it. And then from there, I was actually met a man named Gino Zapponi, who at the time was the vice president at Domaine Chandon, and he said, hey, you seem to really enjoy this. What you should really do is spend an entire year to see if it's something you truly love. And so he actually found me my next job, which was working for Chateau St. Jean in the kind of the production area for a full cycle of winemaking. So I actually took a leave of absence from school and spent time at Chateau St. Jean pursuing wine throughout the entire year of winemaking to get a feel for, is this something I really wanted to do? And after that point, then I just went back to Davis and changed my major and studied winemaking instead.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So, from that experience, it's like, what is it, I've got so many questions. What does it take to make a good bottle of wine?
That's an interesting question, because I know that there's a lot of people that I've met in my path, my course, that have studied the same thing I have studied, but I think they lack sometimes is the passion, or it's not passion, the love, the commitment. They're trying to pursue it with too rigid of a course. They want a recipe, and there is no recipe. Every year throws you a new curveball, and you have to be willing to accept that curveball and go with it. Yeah. And so there's always high drama in winemaking, as far as I'm concerned. And though I'm a high dramatist, there's always that kind of that end goal that if you put everything you've got into it, the end goal is you can make a really incredible bottle of wine, and that is kind of the end goal that keeps me focused. And I think that's. That I'll do anything I can to get to that end goal. If it means, right, what we're talking about, racking things or doing things above and beyond in the winemaking thing. We don't give up. We just keep trying and trying and trying to create that perfect bottle of wine. So
how do you know that you reached the perfect bottle of wine? It's a goal that...
It gives you shivers. I get shivers still. When you taste a wine, sometimes you feel this wine and you can just feel it. It's kind of an internal... gut feeling to it. I mean, you're always wondering if you could have done a better job, and I'm constantly second guessing myself and wanting to try again, or can we reblend that, or you can ask these guys, I drive them nuts because we'll taste the same blend in various forms 10 times before I'll finally say, okay, I think maybe we need to go ahead and pursue blend B. I'm always wondering if there isn't yet another better bottle of wine out there, but you taste. When you sit down sometimes and you taste a blend that you've put together, you feel it. It's an emotional response to it.
So your whole body feels it.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of go, oh, I like this one.
Yeah. One of the things I'm kind of curious about is like, do women winemakers make better wine than men?
I have no idea.
I'll load it.
Yeah, you're loading it. I read a newsletter once, and I was chuckling because it's like, why didn't I think of that? Patty Green said, she goes, I don't know. I'm not a man. I've never been a man. So, I don't know. It's a still very much male-dominated business. There's a lot of guys out there. There's a lot of great wines being made. I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't say that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Didn't take the bait. All right. I'm also, Chronicle wants me to do a book on women winemakers. And so I'm looking for hooks.
Well, you know what? I think for women winemakers, it's not necessarily just women winemakers. It's any woman, but the whole family. If you're passionate about your job and you're passionate about your family, it can be a really tough road to find balance. And I'm sure it's the same thing for men, but I guess maybe you're more torn because you're having children, you're bringing your child to work, it's in the wine industry and stuff, and making sure your child understands it's a wine industry, and there's pitfalls ahead as far as, overuse, overconsumption sort of thing, and trying to establish the balance for your child, the balance for you personally and your family. I find it really hard, and I think if I didn't have Ron here, I might be driven in a direction that might take me away from my family, because there's just so much to do, and there's so many things you could have done that you wish you could do. And I think in the business you see it. Marriages struggle a lot, and again, I don't have other businesses to compare it to, so I can't do a statistical survey and say 9 out of 10 winemakers in the industry divorce versus in high tech it's only 5 out of 10. I'm not saying that. It just seems like we see it all the time with our friends and our peers in the industry, that the family life is hard to maintain a really good balance between work and family.
Yeah.
And I struggle with that because I think about, am I a good mom? Am I different from my other friends who are moms because I don't make every PTA meeting, or we miss soccer games during harvest? There's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's
How
tough.
many kids do you have?
We have 2.
2 kids. How old are they?
They're 16 and, soon to be 16 and 13.
Each you out.
Yeah. Starting to drive, which will be nice. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, it's kind of a bummer when your kids are like, so how much longer is harvest going to last? And you're just like, well, I don't know. Soon.
Yeah.
So, but I think we've done a really good job of maintaining a fine balance.
What would you say in the years that you've done, that you've been in the wine industry, what's been like the thing that you felt the best about? It's like maybe a big success, or maybe you tried something that was a little bit different, and it was just, this really worked.
I think the thing that I feel really, really good about, to be quite honest, is a little different than that. It's not necessarily a bottle of wine, but it's a commitment to work with my peer group in the industry, and we spent a lot of time talking and sharing kind of our formula. We started this group 10 years ago, and we shared kind of our thought process on wine and why we did what we do. And then I remember this because we were all driving in a car. It was a 5-hour drive down to Southern Oregon, and we're picking each other's theories apart.
So these are all winemakers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, basically shooting holes in each other's theories, and so then you start to question. It's like, you're right. Why do I feel so strongly about doing this? Because these guys just, in a way, disproved my theories here, and so it really made us all rethink. All of us, not just me, but all of us really rethought our winemaking and what we were doing and why we were doing what we're doing. And it's interesting because I really feel that everybody in this group's wines over the last 10 years have improved greatly. And it's because we can call each other up and talk. I can say, hey, I'm a little bit concerned about this wine. Can I bring it by and let you talk and see what you think? And it's this kind of bearing of your souls, no holds barred. If you come in my cell and you taste something, you tell me that you're tasting something. So the honesty and the being candid with each other. And I don't think that's true everywhere, that you can see that kind of passion and commitment.
Everywhere in other industries, or everywhere in, say, California, Napa, or?
Yeah, I think in all the wine industries, when I'm speaking to, I can't really talk about other industries. I'm just talking about kind of in the industry and the sharing. I mean, this is true sharing. This is the kind of the superficial type of sharing. This is the gut-wrenching, hey, Lynn, this wine sucks. And you're like, oh, I know, but what do I do? Kind of thing. Kind of sharing. You let people see your dirty laundry and hope that they can help you. You kind of have to, some ways, let your ego move aside so your friends can help.
So now, this is like a regular group of winemakers, and you get together occasionally to kind of share?
We were really good for the first 7 years. It was once a month, but now it's down to about a quarter now, because of all of us own our own wineries and are quite busy, just managing and running our businesses. But we still taste together. We taste more regularly from, I'd say, January through May, and then it starts kind of every other month sort of thing as the selling season, growing season gets busier and busier. But we walk each other's vineyards, we taste each other's wine. We've done some experiments together where each of us has taken a lot of each other's fruit and made wine, and then discussed how we made it and why we made it, so you can learn, well, I really like his wine better than what I did. What did you do differently? And kind of sharing all of that together.
That's really nice.
Yeah, it's very nice. Yeah. And I just think the commitment that all of us have put into it is pretty amazing, that it continues to this day, because it is a huge commitment. And
what do you know about like the Oregon wine history? Give me like your 2-minute version of Oregon wine history.
Well, I think that the Oregon wine history is really special in that, obviously there were people who came to Oregon and saw and visualized that Oregon could be a great place to make wine, and they were pioneers in that aspect, because that's kind of like jumping off a cliff. They really had no idea what they were doing. And I just even know when I came in '88, there were something like 49 wineries in the state of Oregon. It wasn't a very large industry. And traveling out into the marketplace and trying to sell Oregon, you'd be surprised how many people who live in the U.S. didn't know where Oregon was located. You'd have to almost take a U.S. map and say, we're right here. It's a winemaking region in between Washington and California. And there really was no idea that Oregon grew and made wine. And so there's been a lot of education, and that's one thing that I feel very proud of too, is the Oregon wine industry has done a phenomenal job of educating people, and as a collective group putting out educational information, doing educational seminars, IPNC, now Oregon Pinot Camp, all these events that the winemakers and wineries have come together and created to further educate people about the Oregon market. I think that's a huge benchmark in our history as such.
Yeah.
The other things that I think that Oregon did really well was the whole varietal labeling laws, really being committed to keeping the percentage of what you're tasting in that bottle high, and not dropping it to 75-25 and keeping it in the 90-10 for the varietals like Pinot Noir, the Pinot Gris, those that don't need to be blended. They make great wines by themselves, and historically they've not been blended. And I think that really set us apart as far as our reputation in winemaking goes.
So for the Pinot, it's 90 or is it 100?
It's 90%.
90%.
Mm-hmm. And it always has been 90%.
In Oregon?
Yeah, in Oregon. It's 75-25 elsewhere, and in Oregon it's 90-10. They just changed the laws in Oregon, and the Oregon industry did get together as a group and discuss it, that the Bordeaux varietals are traditionally blended, your Cabernet Merlots, and so they have readjusted the Oregon blending rules and regulations to reflect that they're allowing more blending to go of those Bordelais varieties as such. So,
when you look forward, say 30 years or 50 years at the Oregon wine industry, what do you see? And where this question comes from is like, I look at France, Burgundy, I look at those areas, and I mean, like, they've been around for centuries and centuries and centuries. And there's pluses and minuses. What do you see in the Oregon wine industry looking out?
Yeah, that's a good question, because it's so dynamic right now. Things are going on that even we kind of just go, oh my goodness, that wow. I think we're going to see maybe the industry settling in a little bit. You might not.
What does that mean?
Not the amazing growth that you've been seeing. I think that it's eventually going to reach an equilibrium where there's enough of fruit available. Their wineries aren't. I don't know how many wineries every day are being bonded in Oregon, but it's a phenomenal number. I think we're up towards 400 now bonded wineries in the state of Oregon. But yeah, I don't know, because people are discovering Oregon. Oregon's still affordable to a lot of people, and so they're coming.
What's affordable? The wine or
the land? The land, yeah. And so people are moving to this area because they have this dream. There's still that passion. I mean, I'm always amazed that you still continue to find people coming from all over the world with a passion for wine, and they want to own a piece of it, and they're buying property. So it's a pretty crazy time right now, and I'm just, we're kind of sitting here wondering.
And you say, one of the things that you said was what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
and right away I thought about, there's the property issues, and then like there's large amounts of money coming in.
Correct.
Tell me a little bit about what you see those influences.
Well, it's challenging us.
In what way?
Well, in the way that land that you maybe thought once your business was on its feet could turn around and buy more land to continue your growth is now not obtainable. I mean, because the price is too high. There's a lot of these acres out here that just 5 years ago you could have probably bought for a third of the price they're selling for now. So, you got to look at it and put that into your fiscal budget, and you just kind of go, oh man, I don't know if it makes sense. The price of fruit continues to increase every year. The vineyard needs to have more money, and I mean, one of it is they're looking at the price of the wine, and they're looking at how popular Oregon wine is, and so the price keeps going up. So that for me, it's really hard to budget because you're constantly kind of doing this and everything, and so you sit back and you go, well, you want your vineyard owners to be successful too, so you can't really balk at the price, but at some point there's got to be more of a kind of, I guess, a balancing out, because we can't continue to do this with our prices. You
Steep
can't
angle going up.
Correct. And so I just hope it kind of starts to settle in a little, so we have a little more consistency. You have the ability to contract for fruit and know you've got the fruit for more than just a year until somebody else comes in and offers more money, sort of thing. So there's a little drama right now.
Yeah. And so when you're still looking out, your picture of 30 to 50 years out was a little vague.
Yeah, because I see us, Penner-Ash has grown to where it wants to be, and so I see us stabilizing or balancing out, and so we're where we want to be. We've got a beautiful facility, we've got a really great market, we've got a nice product out there. I mean, we're happy where we're at, and so, I kind of see that. For us, the next 10 years, 15 years, I see us kind of continue to make great wine and just getting the name out there. After that, I mean, I wonder about consolidation. I don't know, will people be buying up smaller wineries and consolidating? You see a little bit of that starting already, Erath and Rexhill. Yeah. I don't know. I have a hard time with a 30 to 50 year image and trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
So
what does a winemaker bring to the bottle?
What does a winemaker bring to the bottle?
Yeah, as opposed to the vineyard manager, as opposed to...
I think I always hear the story about it, the wine is made in the vineyard. Well, it is to some degree, but I think that, it takes a lot of focus by both winemaker and vineyard manager to figure out what that vineyard's going to be bringing to the bottle. So we're pretty active in the vineyards, going out, pruning decisions all the way through the picking decisions. So we're there for leaf pulling, and we're there for the thinning decisions. We have quite a bit of time spent in the early growing season in the vineyards. And then when that fruit starts arriving, you have to respond to it too. And 2007 is a perfect year, it took a ton of work by our vineyard managers, but you know what? It took twice as much work in the winery to create the wines that we've created. Because of the rain issues. When the rain came in, it threw the big curveball at us, and it's been a while since it's rained in Oregon during harvest, and so I don't think people were completely geared up for what it meant when it started raining. Mud in the vineyards, tractors sliding around in the vineyards, fruit that couldn't be gotten out of the vineyards. We were having fruit delivered at 11 o'clock at night because it took them 10 hours. It was picked in the morning, but it took them 10 hours to get it just out of the vineyard. So that threw us off because we're sitting here, trying to process fruit and in readiness for the next day's fruit, and then your fruit doesn't show up till 11 o'clock at night, and then you're here all night making it, but you got to be here the next morning for the next round of fruit. So it was one of those things, I think, that and in a way, winemakers are the only one. Well, the winemakers have to keep the sanity. You not only bring the creative effort, but you have to bring the logistics effort into the picture too, and keep the sanity of the winery. And it's hard because you're just looking at fruit deteriorating out there, and all you want to do is bring it in. But you're looking at your crew, kind of going, "But I can't kill them." I got to learn how to balance this and what's important here.
And plus, you have a limit. You have a capacity.
We have a capacity issue, and you don't want to sacrifice the wine that's already in because there's still stuff that needs to come in. So you don't want to rack that off early because you want to get that in. And so, Yeah, I spend a lot of time with a big piece of paper saying, okay, if tank 1 goes to tank 10, then 2 can handle the fruit from this vineyard. But now, wait a minute, do we have enough barrels ready?
Yeah.
And so I always joke about it. It's a chess game, because you know ultimately down the road you're going to back yourself into a corner somewhere, and so you try not to let that happen. You don't want to be checkmate. So.
Yeah. So what happens when you get checkmate?
You get creative. And this is where, the industry in so many ways is really helpful. One year we called Michael Etzel, and he let us borrow his trailer, and I had noticed out in Dick Shea's vineyard that he wasn't using all of his fermenters. I called him up and begged him, and he let me borrow his fermenters. And so we took Etzel's trailer over, grabbed Dick Shea's tanks, and brought them back here and used them. So it's just, I'm kind of one that the detail things don't escape me. I'm always kind of looking around and keeping my eye out. And so should something come up, I get pretty scrappy in trying to figure out how we can make it work.
Yeah.
So this year we actually ended up having to call down to California to a grower down there who had extra fermentation bins.
Wow.
And we had them shipped up overnight, which cost us a fortune. But it meant that I had the 20 tons that I had scheduled to pick, and the next big rain was coming then that next day. He was able to pick. My bin showed up. We were able to put that fruit in. Otherwise, I would have had to let it hang through yet another rain. And I just felt, I guess my gut was telling me that fruit shouldn't hang through another rain, and we wanted it in. So we did everything we could do to get it in.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about like the different varietals that can be successful in Oregon. Starting with the
Well, obviously Pinot Noir, yeah. I think Pinot Noir likes to be grown on the edge, and it's interesting because the vintages that were maybe more of the challenging winemaker vintages ultimately seem to be the wines that people remember the most. I remember back to some of the earlier vintages like 93 and 99. They were cool, they were slightly wet. The press was kind of already saying, I don't know if Oregon's going to pull it off. And yet, those are some of the wines that I still get emails from people talking about. Just had a phenomenal bottle of wine. It was your 93 Pinot Noir.
Yeah.
And so
why is that, I wonder?
I think maybe because it's cooler and the acidity stays in the wine. And when you have a cooler growing day, the fruit tends to retain its color and its fruit a little bit better. It doesn't maybe turn into that red baking spice fruit. It stays more in the blackberry plummy notes, and so it has a more youthfulness to it. So it maybe shows that youthfulness, and it lasts a little longer aromatically and mouthfeel in the bottle. And then maybe it's because you end up working harder. Yeah.
Well, I'm kind of wondering about that because all of a sudden there's a big challenge, and then that really your adrenaline gets going. And,
it could be, and you just get focused and you work until it's done. If it's a real easy vineyard, maybe you get a little more casual about it, and I don't know. It's a good question.
What other varietals are?
People are doing Pinot Gris up here in Oregon. We don't do a Pinot Gris, but there's Pinot Gris being grown in Oregon. Again, it's a lovely white varietal, and I think people really enjoy it because it's something you can make and turn around and have out on the market pretty quick. But yet, it's a really nice wine. We all need that type of wine that you can have out there pretty quickly. I'm a big fan of Riesling. We're doing a little teeny bit of dry Riesling. I think Oregon is well suited for doing Riesling because of the cooler aspects of the growing climate. We plant a Riesling on the edges of where Pinot Noir grows, so it tends to retain its acidity. It gives you really pretty, fresh, bright fruit to it. Sometimes it can be a little bit in the minerally, stone-fruited components to it, which I love. And so we like Riesling. We do go down south, where I think down south they're doing a great job of growing Syrah and Viognier. Also some nice varietals down there. I have to admit I'm not really familiar with the Bordeaux varieties in Oregon, though I know they're doing them and growing them in Southern Oregon, and people are making some really nice wines. That's not our focus. Our focus is truly more the Burgundian style wines, and that's why we put our focus on Pinot Noir and Riesling.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious, it's like, what actually brought you to Oregon? What was the decision?
Oh, it was a job offer. I was working down in Napa Valley and had really hoped to kind of further my career. I was in my early 20s, and I thought I was ready to take on an assistant winemaker position, and I was actually not offered the job of assistant winemaker, but I was offered the job to train the new assistant winemaker, and I was thinking, this is weird, I'm not good enough to have the job, but I'm good enough to train the guy that's coming in to take that job. And so I realized that maybe I needed to do something else, make a job change as such, and it was simultaneous to that. We were getting married, and I was thinking, well, I could take a break, and I got a call from Rex Hill saying, would you be interested in the winemaking position up here? And that's like, oh, hey, we're just newly married, no kids, why not take an adventure and an experience? And so, I mean, it was perfect timing for us just to.
And that wasn't even an assistant, that was being the winemaker.
Being the winemaker, yeah. So, I mean, that was quite a challenge going from, I really never spent time as an assistant winemaker. I went from being in the cellars of Stag's Leap to a winemaking position. So there was a lot of issues I had to learn about management, financial aspects, just even like where do you order glass from, and it was a busy time.
Well, what about too? It's like that's a big difference between Napa.
Oh, the growing climate was huge.
Gosh.
You can ask Paul Hart; he still laughs at me. I was ready to harvest in July.
In July?
Yes. And so I'm sitting there, I got everything done, and we're all ready to go, and we're sitting there, and Paul goes, Lynn, typically September, October, and I'm like, oh my God, that blew me away, because it was just, I had spent so many years in the Napa Valley where we were harvesting and ready to go, and here I was sitting here waiting and waiting.
And you were in Napa Valley, you weren't out in Carneros or...
No, I was in the heart of Napa Valley picking Chardonnay, August 10th or something, and here, we didn't even see Chardonnay until November, I think, so it was a big change.
Tell me a little bit more about those changes, because I mean, again, it's like I'm just trying to imagine you coming up here.
Yeah.
And the weather, the coolness.
And the rain.
The rain, and the rain is always right behind your back.
Well, I got really lucky. I don't know if Paul would consider it really lucky, but in 1988, my first vintage in Oregon, it was a short crop vintage. And so, we weren't challenged by excessive amounts of fruit. It was a dry vintage.
So short crop because it was cool, or short
no?
Crop
In '88, the set wasn't very good. I think it rained in '88 during the set, and then the growing season was very dry, and so you didn't get a lot of water weight. The berries were starting to dry out a little bit, and it was a warmer vintage, and so. Really, it wasn't a very challenging vintage in Oregon. It was a pretty nice vintage. I remember some people said even my dog could make great wine in '88, and I'm sitting here freaking out because it's my first vintage in Oregon. I'm thinking, if I don't make great wine, I'm not as good as their dog. So
is that the year that you got a dog?
Yeah, that was the year we got a dog. He made the wine. I didn't do anything. So those are kind of the challenges. You're young, you're naive, you're up against people you've only heard about, Erath and Adelsheim and all, and just kind of wondering, are you worthy to be here? And so, you go into hyperdrive trying to make sure you do a really good job. But, there were some great people. I just remember Terry Castile from Bethel Heights. I called him up. I didn't even really know him. And I just said, Terry, will you come taste my wine? Wow. I want to have an opinion. And he came over and he tasted my wine, and he's been my dearest friend in the industry since, So there are some good people that really, stepped up to the plate and are willing to help out and make sure that everybody succeeds, because you don't want anybody to bring down the group. You want everybody to reach higher. Yeah. So
that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you about. It's like the Oregon culture. It's like you come from Napa culture, and then you come into this Oregon culture. What's the difference, or what was the Oregon culture like in 1988?
Oh, it was more family oriented. There were more, when you'd go to winemaking events, it wouldn't just be a bunch of winemakers and people hanging out. It would be your family hanging out, and so with kids, things. And so we really enjoyed it, because ultimately we were planning on starting our family too. And so the pace was a little, I don't want to say it was laid back, because people always say Oregon's so laid back, and it's not true. We're not laid back. I just think we have a different, maybe, focus.
I'm not sure I understand what that means.
Well, I don't think in the early years your job wasn't everything. Being the winemaker wasn't everything. There was more to people's lives. You had, you had a rounded experience. You enjoyed other things, and you pursued those other things.
You could go backpacking and that sort of thing.
Right. Yeah. Bicycling. My husband and I were big cyclists, and so we'd cycle everywhere, and we went hiking. We would love whitewater rafting. We would go off and go whitewater rafting and that sort of thing. So I guess I wasn't just completely defined by my job. It wasn't. There's more to me than just the winemaking side of my life. There was all this other stuff that we were involved in. I think others in the industry shared that, and so we'd go off and go camping together. And sure, there's wine and great food there, but you're out camping and sharing an experience with people.
Yeah.
And we enjoyed those earlier years. And it's hard for me because we've gotten busier now. We have kids that are keeping us involved. We don't do as much in the industry, and so it's really hard for me. Has the industry changed, or have I changed? But we don't spend nearly as much time in the industry, because it can be consuming now. There's always an event, there's always an auction, there's always a tasting, there's something that people want you at, and we can't do it all. You can't do it all. And I mean, I miss spending time with my good friends in the industry as much as we have, but we all also have so much going on that you can't always spend the time to do that.
And that's like family and life.
Family and life. I mean, we now own a business, and so there's, a lot more that goes on with owning a business other than being an employee of a business. There's a lot more responsibility that you have to take care of.
Yeah. What gave you the idea and then the courage to call Terry?
I don't know. I guess I never really had that much of an ego or worried about what people thought. All I ultimately wanted to do was make a good wine, and I didn't want to fail. I never wanted to fail Paul Hart. That was because he had the faith in bringing me up to Oregon. I felt there was a huge amount of pressure to make sure we succeeded in making Rex Hill a viable entity.
Yeah. So why Terry as opposed to, it's like people a little closer?
He was a gentle soul. You could see that when you met him just in different social settings. I think the Castillos all have been very welcoming of people to the industry, and I just kind of identified with him early on.
Yeah.
So,
what kind of an event or something that has been kind of a bummer for you? Maybe something that you tried that didn't work, or something that was just, you just said, oh, bad word.
Well, that would have been 2005, to be honest.
Oh, is that right? What happened in 2005?
Well, we just built this brand new facility, though we spent 3 years designing it. Thought through everything, asked questions about everything. I mean, I literally cut out little forklifts and we laid out our tanks and we fake drove our little forklift and see if the turning radius was enough. We thought it all out, and we spent hours thinking things through, and ultimately construction crews would come in and go, oops, sorry, we can't do what you asked us to do. We lost 10 inches there. So I'd go back to our drawings and, do it all over again. So there was a lot of energy put on that. And so 2005 is our first vintage in a brand new facility, and it starts raining during that vintage. And so now we've got rain coming down. We have all brand new equipment, and I've got fruit that's just seen its first rain. We bring it into the winery, and the destemmer completely turns it to mush and just grinds it to goo. And I'm sitting there, I think I might have said that word, looking at it going, I don't know what to do. It's a brand new destemmer. It's a brand new line. Everything about it should work. We've designed this winery. I've spent 25 years in the business. Everything here should work, and it's not working. And you're just looking ahead going, I have 100 other tons to bring in, and this isn't working. And there was a little moment of panic there.
Oh, yeah.
So we called down to the destemmer guys, and they basically wrote us off and just said, sorry, everybody else seems to be able to make it work, kind of thing. And you're up here in Oregon. They're down in California. We were just, I couldn't sleep. We got it to work, but it was really slow. I think we managed to do less than a ton an hour, and I knew I had 100 tons out there, so you can do the math, going, this is going to be the longest vintage in the history of Oregon. And we just kept at it and kept at it. We have to stop and clean it and work with it. And We just went on and on and on. And those wines then, because of that, started to be incredibly reduced in the barrel, which meant then we had to rack them quite a bit more because they were reduced. So 05 was one of those vintages where I didn't sleep at all, and I basically said, I hate this vintage, And it was our first vintage. You wanted it to be celebratory, and instead it was like, I hate this vintage. The irony behind it is, I think, as we were talking about earlier, the most difficult vintages turn out to be some of the finest wines, and the 2005 wines have been incredibly well received. People love them. We just made the top 100 in the Spectator for the 05 vintage, and I'm just looking at it kind of going, I never in my wildest dreams would have guessed this. Never, ever, ever, ever. So after that vintage, I would have basically thought we were going to lose our business because it was such a challenging vintage.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah, there you go.
Story. What a great story. I got to check my list here. You've kind of talked about this a little bit, but as a winemaker, what's your goal? I mean, what are you trying to do?
What am I trying to do? Just make wines that make me feel they're the best that we could have produced. I mean, like I was telling you, there's this intuitive gut reaction to wine, and that's my ultimate goal. I don't think I need to move anybody else. I mean, I'm not trying to move anybody else to an experience, though I hope people will drink them and be moved the same way I am. But ultimately, you know, when we sit in those tastings and we all just kind of go, whew, that's kind of our goal. I mean, we want to enjoy the wines. We want to enjoy the process as a winemaker. You know, I just want to make sure I still love what I'm doing and I love what we've made. And that's kind of our goal.
Yeah. You know, it's kind of interesting because in the art world, when you ask like an artist that's really an artist, you know, what are you trying to do? And the goal is to kind of please yourself, but not in a selfish kind of a way, but it's a way to make something tingle inside of you or something in that sense, and then you hope other people can respond to it.
Yeah, they could see that or taste that. Exactly. Yeah. And so, I mean, that's our goal. I mean, how else could you do it? Because I don't know how I could guess or try to decide what other people want. It's more kind of, it has to be.
And when you're making this wine, are you thinking about wine Spectator scores? Are you what's in the back of your head? Because it can't. You've got all these influences.
You do have all those influences, and you know you can't think that way. You can't, because honestly, you don't know what moves them or motivates them. I don't, and I can't even begin to guess what would. Yeah. So I don't really pursue that ever when we're down there doing our thing. And I don't know how to explain it, because we always talk about training people or having somebody, you know, do what I do, and I'm sure my peers feel the same thing doing what they do. It's not like we're indispensable and a winery wouldn't live without us, but so often I'll be walking through the cellar, smelling a tank as it's fermenting, and think, you know what, this wine needs this. It just needs this. Yeah.
It just comes.
It just comes to me. And so, of course, Ron will say, well, why did you decide to do that? And it's just like, I don't know. I'm just thinking about the weather. I was thinking about the vineyard side. I'm thinking ultimately, after I've tasted other wines that we've already brought in, that maybe this wine is the wine that needs to go in this direction to complement the palate. So always keeping kind of the big picture in your head swirling around, and things come to me and I say, no, we got to do this. We're going to do this today. So I don't know how to explain it other than it's just this big picture swirl that all of a sudden the pieces start, you know, coming into place to focus the picture.
Yeah. And when you have those kind of intuitive moments, tell me a little bit about where your mind is. I mean, does it come? Can you have like lots of things going? You're thinking about like business, and you're thinking about this. I mean, can you have those intuitive moments when your mind is flooded with problems and other ideas, or is it, you know, at the other end, you know, like you're in a transcendental kind of a state?
No, it's not a transcendental state. I don't do that.
Okay.
I think my husband wishes I would, but no, it's more like we're big. You know, we go out and we exercise quite a bit, and so it'll be things like I'll be on my walk and I'll be thinking about, you know, should we go with this distributor, or maybe should we release this wine today or next week? I'm thinking of all those things, and all of a sudden something else will come into my head, and I'll be thinking, oh, you know, that wine downstairs, what we really need to do with it is. And so my brain is a multitasking brain. It just constantly is thinking of all things, and they don't have any connection to the other. And I drive everybody crazy, because I will think they're hearing or seeing what I'm doing in my head, and I'll just start talking to them as if they've had all this other conversation with me, and they haven't.
The conversation that you had while you were walking or running
in my brain, and I don't realize it. I truly don't understand why they don't understand what I'm talking about, because I've just kind of assumed that we've already been discussing this, because I have been thinking it through and letting it swirl around, that I'm just assuming that everybody's on the same page. Yeah. And then I realize, oops, you know, it was a personal conversation, not a conversation with someone. So, you know, that's tough sometimes for people.
And so then you have to, you know, step by step go through your thought process and, you know.
Try to explain what I'm thinking and why I'm thinking that, you know. Well, the reason why I came up with that idea is because, this was because I was thinking about this, and ultimately we want to do that, but then we want to be able to do this, and so we need to make sure this tank moves to this place, and then we can put that wine in there and let it settle, because I want to make it settle longer or something like that.
And so you can always verbalize, like, those intuitive ideas.
To some degree, yeah. I mean, to some degrees. I mean, and other times it's harder. You know, why did I decide to do a pump over versus a punch down that morning? And it's just like, well, I felt like it needed to be pumped over today, and so we're going to pump it over. So set it up.
And so that's not a rational decision. That's like more of an intuitive.
Yeah, it's like the wine is talking to you and telling you that this is what it needs.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I get a little weird downstairs because I will go downstairs and I'll smell the tank and I'll talk to it, and you put your hand on it and you kind of go, what do I need to do here? And it'll come to me and it's like, well, I think maybe if we did pump it over, it'd be a good idea. And so is it based on science? Is it based on experience, or is it just this emotional response to the wine? I don't know.
Yeah.
So.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's kind of weird sometimes, but.
Well, I can relate to that in terms of like the art world.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I run into that kind of a situation all the time. It's like there's a little voice that just says, turn left.
Yeah.
Or drive 50 miles.
And there's going to be a great picture.
There's something there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Drive 50 miles.
And sure enough.
Whoa.
Yeah. So you try to explain that to somebody. I don't know how to explain it, but it happens.
So that's kind of interesting. Yeah. So you've been in the vineyard for quite a long time.
Mm-hmm.
What has the vineyard taught you about life? Like, what kind of lessons have you learned out there? Or about you personally, maybe?
Well, there's no guarantees. I mean...
What do you mean? Tell me what that means.
Well, I think that, you can do everything right and plan everything out, and ultimately, a curveball is thrown your way. What's up?
I was curious.
Oh, okay.
How you guys doing?
Okay. So, so about life in the same way, I mean, as much as I would love to have life planned out and know exactly with security that this is the way we're going, it doesn't happen that way. And we always seem to survive. So I think that's, that helps, that ultimately, you get a rainy vintage like '07, and it was a curveball. And as much as we planned for and tried to think it through, we still had curveballs thrown at us, and we survived it. And we got good wine downstairs, and so we can all kind of start to relax it. Okay, you survived yet another challenge. And I think as every year goes on and there's more and more challenges that you survive and come through, you get a little bit more confident that the next curveball that comes along, you just got to sit down and figure out how you're going to manage it.
So where does that strength come from to okay, you're pointing to your husband Ron. To face those, those challenges.
Well, I think now that we're here together, we talk about him, and he'll admit I talk his ear off constantly about I don't know what we're going to do here. What do you think? And I mean, sometimes I just have to process the information and make sure that someone else is hearing me process this information. Yeah. And he says, "Don't worry about it. We'll be fine. Don't worry about it." I mean, his standard answer is, "We'll be fine." And that's all I need to hear, is just because I need to process the information and kind of keep it out there, thinking about it, and make sure somebody else is hearing it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a matter of just persistence. And
persistence, well, I'm not sure what that means.
Well, persistence in the sense that I think in our society far too many people will
Ron, can I get you to come a little closer?
Yeah, talk to the mic.
Right here. And actually, the question, where this question was, is like, what has the vineyard taught you about life?
Are you getting esoteric now? I see you're becoming esoteric and philosophical.
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I think more than anything else, I think the vineyard humbles people in the sense that as much as you think you have control over, your destiny or, the quality of your fruit, like Lynn said, there's always going to be challenges, and I think it's how you rise to those challenges really defines character, and in the long run defines quality as far as our product. And when I go back to persistence, it's because I think far too many people will look at a situation and throw their hands up, or without experience, get themselves in back themselves into a corner and not really know how to problem solve and get out of that. In which, as far as we're concerned, with Lynn's 25 vintages now, she's pretty much seen it all. We're very focused on our goals and where we want to be, and whether it be long-term or short-term goals. I think we've never really strayed from those goals. I mean, it's always been kind of laser directed, there's been this, and I don't want to use the word guiding light, but that's way too, religious. But it's a matter of, I think, just feeling comfortable and knowing where you are now and where you want to be in the future. And so, again, I think it's that persistence. It goes back to persistence, because if something doesn't work, we're willing to make changes to make it work.
Yeah.
To attain those goals, whether it be short or long-term goals. And I think some people, they feel that they pretty much have all the answers, and they're going to get, it's going to bite them in the ass, essentially, in the long run.
Yeah.
We're kind of slow and steady.
Tools.
Yeah. And now, that said, at this point in time, we're extremely happy where we're at. The brand's strong. Wines are consistently, year after year, high quality. And I think there aren't too many producers that can say that.
Yeah.
So.
I've got to change a battery here.
Yeah, cycling is actually quite dangerous. It is the most accident. The Vineyard.
Yeah. So the question was, what has the Vineyard taught you about life and about you personally? Because you're challenged, and we're talking, the whole thing. We're talking climate. We're talking, 2005. We're talking all those kinds of things. And one of the things that I've heard, Lynn, is that you said that Ron, is a good person to be like a sounding block. Like you needed somebody to just talk with about this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to hear just a little bit about that relationship. What has the relationship learned from the Vineyard?
Well, I think going back to, like you said, Lynn's analyzing, what's going on in the vineyard. And typically that centers around the quality of fruit, or growing quality fruit. And I think as far as personality types, she needs to work through the fact that it's going to be okay. And I think that's one of the issues, that as far as our personalities are very different, in that, I'm truly an optimist. And I think that if you stay with, a situation and you sit back from it and contemplate and start rationalizing, this is okay. We could, switch gears here, or, we can actually, pull out of the hat from past experiences, procedures or techniques to make it better. It will be better. And again, I think it goes back to the point where sometimes people, overreact to situations, because, whether it be an immediate gratification, they want to make it right at that particular point in time, or sometimes I think it just takes a little bit of patience and, a well thought out plan. So, to answer your question, I don't know if that's...
Well, I see it. I don't know if you mean in our relationships too, because, he's always been the one. The first time I spent how many weeks looking for houses when we first moved to Oregon?
Yeah.
When I was always looking at the houses going, there's too much work here, this house has ugly wallpaper, I just could not find a house that I thought we could live in. And Ron comes up for one afternoon, the very first house we look at, and he's like, this all has to do, this is fine. I'm like, are you nuts? It's got ugly brown carpet, the wallpaper's yucky, and he's like, you can see through all that. And I was so focused on everything that needs to be done and taken care of and all. And so, buying this house, and within, a week, we ripped the carpet out, we ripped the wallpaper out, and it was one of our favorite houses in Oregon. But, I don't think I would have ever picked that house.
Yeah.
Well,
I think I trust my instincts. I think that's where it comes down to. Not that I've always made, I don't have any real regrets, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Any real what?
Regrets?
Oh, regrets.
I can look at something and go, okay, I'm very definitive as far as yay or nay, or I like something or I dislike something. Whereas Lynn sometimes will look at it and go, like she said, she'll focus on the details or the finer points at hand, which is actually a great trait for a winemaker, because she sees things in the cellar that I think most winemakers don't see. And off the record, in 2005, I thought you saw a lot of things in the cellar that some of her peers didn't see, some issues, and how it played out was beautiful, because our 05s were very well received, whereas some wineries, weren't. I mean, their wines were not. And so I think it's that detail or attention to detail that actually works to her advantage as far as winemaking. But then again, when you look at the globally or the big picture, sometimes that muddles that big picture, and I think that's where maybe I could step in and say, well, let's step back for a moment, and where do we want to be in 3, 5, 10 years, or is this a good business decision? Well, yeah, I mean, depending on who we're setting this up with, as far whether it be a partnership or personalities or a new vineyard site that we're looking at with new growers. I think that we've always made good choices, just because we've been able to step back.
Can you give me a specific example? And probably like the best for me would be like maybe a vintage or some winemaking decision or something like that. Because like this is an interesting relationship, and I hadn't thought about that. So,
in which
this dynamic.
Well, we just
focusing
talked
on
about
that.
05. I mean,
the 05.
Yeah.
I mean, there were days that I was truly emotionally distraught because I was thinking of all the work that needed to be done that I foresaw that we needed to do and that we were not going to be able to get through it all. I mean, it's Ron, myself, and Chris downstairs. I mean, and I can't physically do a lot of the work that needs to be done. And so, I mean, I'm looking at these guys feeling guilty because there is so much work that I foresee we have to do. And Ron's like, well, tell us what needs to be done. We're just going to get it done. Just what do you need done? And so he, in a way, would focus me and get me to like, okay, we got to start getting this done. Where can we start?
Yeah.
Because as I was telling you, I got this big picture swirling around in my brain, and so trying to get it to play through. And so sometimes it just took a voice saying, we can do it.
Yeah.
Tell us what needs to be done. Let's get it done.
Mm-hmm.
And going down, just slowly working through it and getting
Mm-hmm.
it done. But there are days during the 05 vintage we just,
Mm-hmm.
when the distiller didn't work and the fruit's hanging and it's raining, it was like, woo.
Yeah. I think that can overwhelm or paralyze some people, but I think because of a relationship and because of, I think going back to, we have very, very distinct goals, and I think they're very focused, and I think we always kind of fall back on that and say, well, this situation isn't the best of situations, but let's, how can we improve it? And, how can we step back and actually work through it to achieve that final goal, whether it be, whether it be a vineyard coming in underripe or overripe. I guess there's sometimes you have to take a deep breath. And for us, often, it's funny because I think sometimes even in the afternoons are kind of like our little coffee break is a time where we look forward to, and we can sit back and take a deep breath and go, okay, well, what worked and what didn't work, and so what are we going to do? How are we going to change this situation? It's almost a focusing point. We have these little rituals that the two of us do, and sometimes, when those rituals are gone, it's pretty amazing how quickly things kind of can dissolve.
So you have a coffee break at like 2:15 or something.
Yeah.
Well, in early afternoon, to refocus.
Take a break from what we're both doing. And sometimes it's just grabbing our coffee and going home in the car even, and just being able to talk. But the coffee is kind of a calming, the end of the day is done.
Yeah, it's a ritual.
Uh-huh.
It's something we both look forward to. With it's a visceral experience in the sense that it's something that's taste and you put something that's warm, and typically in a warm, obviously in a winter's day, but I think it just kind of refocuses us to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Well, also, we were talking about balance earlier, and I was explaining how, I think that's one thing we've really done a good job of balancing, as consuming as work is, we also have our family life as balance, and that's not necessarily the case in this industry. And, so those little rituals, being able to talk, it's a good time, too, to segue away from now the work experience, and we're heading home to the family experience, too. You have to start that transition so that when we come home, we're not still talking about, this or that, who didn't do this or whatever at work. We try to move into now picking the kids up from basketball, piano, whatever needs to be done. So it's a good transition point.
Yeah.
See, I always go back to the fact when we were living in Napa Valley and I was teaching down there, I saw some of what we consider the first families of Napa just disintegrate in front of my eyes. Because I had their kids, I taught their kids, And it's, as Lynn probably has mentioned before, it's an extremely demanding industry in the sense of your time, because people always want your time. There's a lot of ego involved.
Ego whose ego?
Well, we get calls all the time from
Well-
people who feel that they're important and that we should come out on a Saturday to say show them around or have dinner with them. And yes, we like them, and yes, they're good buyers or nice people or whatever, wine writer. But it's a Saturday, and we've got a soccer game, or we've got.
Well, yeah, or I was going into the realm of egos in the sense of winemakers. I mean, there is kind of a rock star quality to successful winemakers, and people want your time, and it can be a very heady experience. And I think some winemakers are kind of feed into that attention. And that's one of the things I think I saw in Napa Valley was, in its heyday when it was first starting to take off back in the 80s, you would do dinners 3 or 4 nights a week. You'd be away from your families. You'd be traveling, to New York or Los Angeles or San Francisco. So there was people just wanted your attention. So I think get in the way, kind of cloud, going back to some of those goals or those, whether it be short or long-term goals, or staying focused on the quality of the product. And for our case, like Lynn said, there is that balance. I mean, more so even than the business is our family. And I don't think we've taken anything away or neglected in any way, the needs of our family, or put the needs of the business over our family. And I think that happens quite often.
Is that balance easier to do you think, here in Oregon as opposed to, say, California, especially Napa now?
I would say yes, but it's changing in Oregon.
Explain that. What do you mean?
Well, I think because there's so much attention to Oregon in the last few years, I think for some are maybe going down that path, of those early years of Napa when it was just emerging, and it was, the new kid on the block, and there was all of this attention directed towards Napa, and still is to a certain degree. But I would say, generally speaking, Oregon is more family-oriented. There's certainly more information shared amongst the wineries and the winemakers here than a lot of other growing regions, or wine regions. But, it has its downside too, and we're seeing some changes in the industry.
Well, one of the questions I asked Lynn was, what she saw, like into the future, looking 10, 20, 30, 50 years into the future.
I didn't answer it.
And she took the Fifth Amendment on that. So she said,
no predictions? No predictions?
Wait till I it's like, what do you see? What kind of changes do you see, like in the wine culture, in the wine industry?
Oregon specific or?
Oregon specific.
Wow.
Yeah, see, it's a hard one.
Yeah. Well, and as you well know, there the first corporate buyout just happened this last year, and there will be more coming down the pipe, and it will no longer be 100% family, small operation, family-owned, industry. But that's, to a certain degree, that could be a good thing too.
In what way?
Well, if it's handled correctly, in the sense that, even though some of these larger entities are coming in buying, smaller brands, I think if there's a lot of local control, or there's still the control of the quality of that brand, the larger entities will allow, probably more sophisticated marketing, more, reaching out further into the markets than we've been able to do in the past, because we just haven't had the financial resources. So that's a good thing.
So it's bringing the boat, the tide rises and brings all the boats up.
Sure. I think that it could have that effect. Certainly.
Yeah. What else do you see, like, out into the future?
Wow.
I was thinking that, saying how I thought that eventually we're going to reach more of an equilibrium than we see right now. I mean, all this land buying and planting and money and that sort of thing, that ultimately I see it kind of settling down somewhat in the next 5 to 10 years or something. But the wine business is like this too. It's not like this. It seems like you always, just when you think you've reached your equilibrium, you have a very short crop year, and so then everybody's scrambling again, and people start planning because they're thinking that there's not enough fruit, and pipeline has to be refilled. And so I don't know that there's ever going to be in total equilibrium. I don't see it in California. The next varietal change. I keep thinking, is there the next hot varietal in Oregon? What's it going to be? But I just don't see what that could be because of our growing climate. It's wet and it's cooler.
Yeah.
Global warming is taking place, but it's not to the degree in the next 10 to 20 years. I think that it's going to change a varietal mix here in Oregon.
Well, one of the things we're going to see in the near future too is more vine age too with our vineyards. Don't you think you're going to see potentially a quality of fruit that we haven't seen in the past because of all the recent plantings? So we've been very limited in the past as far as vine age, or just because of one, the industry has been so small. It was very small in comparison to other regions, and two, we didn't think we could plant large vineyard tracts in the early years. And now we're finding larger and larger vineyards that are actually farmed quite well. And I think Xena Crown, and I think Premier Pacific is actually stepping up to the plate. And there was a lot of apprehension and.
Did they actually pull it off?
Yeah. This isn't going to work in Oregon.
Well, what was I'm kind of curious what the stumbling block was. Why did people think that it wouldn't work, like having large tracts?
Well, because they're trying to make them profitable too, obviously. And so, they're looking at ways that they can farm cheaper and still produce quality fruit. And we're all just like, we had long conversations with this particular vineyard company because they really felt after coming into Oregon for 2 or 3 years that they could produce vineyards of 4 to 5 tons to the acre. And we're always just saying, historically, this can't be done. This can't be done. It's not been done. We've never seen it. It hasn't produced quality. Well, they pushed the window. It was 2.5 to 3 tons to the acre. It wasn't 4 to 5, but it was a little more quantity than we had seen. And so, we all kind of went, well, they didn't do too bad there. They listened and they backed off, but they improved the quality. I think they're looking at mechanization. More and more mechanization is probably going to be taking place. We'll probably see more machine harvested fruit than, we've never.
And there are experiments as we speak right now as far as mechanized picking versus hand pick.
I only know of one vineyard in Oregon that's being mechanically picked.
There's more than that.
Who else is doing
that? Del Rio did a lot of it.
They did mechanical?
Yeah, he did a lot of it. He actually bought his own machine. Joel is starting to do
How many years has he done that?
I think this is his 2nd year now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And there's some other really high-end vineyard companies that are exploring, and actually we know one that bought a machine has actually just got back from Switzerland. And
which one is that?
Vine Tenders. Joel Myers,
Yeah, believe me, like during 2007 when crews were hard to find because everybody was trying to pick at the same time, we're kind of looking to Joel going, do you think you could your machine work in our vineyard? And we seriously started considering that because there was just not enough workforce out there to manage all the picking that people wanted to do in a day's time because of the weather-related issues. And as more and more vineyard acres come on,
well, and a lot of that's been driven by current policy, immigration policy too. So that is actually has been directly affecting wine growing regions, especially here in Oregon. So, picking fruit at the correct time is critical, and if you don't have the labor force to do so, then you're going to suffer in quality. So a lot of these vineyard companies are looking at other options. And I think it goes back to the spirit of Oregon too, of not really, being relatively new and not being set in their ways as far as procedures or techniques. I think there's a lot of open conversation and debate and maybe what if we did it this way, and let's experiment. Like I said, there's experiments in the cellar right now with the mechanized picking versus hand pick, and they're looking at the quality of the fruit. Now you can't get down some of these steep hillsides with mechanized, but that's okay if you have half your vineyard site in which we're actually working with a gentleman who's developing or purchasing and developing vineyard sites right now, and we're looking at how to lay out the vineyards, and we're trying to maximize the area in which we could mechanize part of the vineyard, and then do your smaller blocks up, in a kind of a greater slope area, and that kind of the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
So you can be very efficient with maybe say the lower 50% of the vineyard, and then go back in with your pickers on the upper section.
Yeah.
So, but that, there was no time. I mean, this is new conversation. This is new. Yeah, I mean, this wasn't going on 4 or 5 years ago. But we didn't have immigration issues either. I mean, this is up front right now as far as national policy.
Yeah.
So.
Can you think of anything else? Like the reader of this book are people from Indiana, from Ohio, and then also people from Oregon. Can you think of anything else that would be interesting to talk to them about Oregon wine industry from your personal perspective?
Beautiful country. I still can't get over coming to work every day, just looking at how pretty it is up here, whether it's raining or snowing or whatever. I mean, there's not very many people in this world that get to come to work in this country like we do. You just want to see it continue and maintain. We struggle with that, watching 99 develop into, strip malls, and you come up here and you can just relax, meditate as such. It's still a job, but it's a great place to end up at.
Yeah, I think our industry is, if you wanted to generalize it too, again, it goes back to the fact that, how can I put this? I think we're very real in the sense that, quality of life is important to us. And what you see is kind of what you get as far as, the individuals involved. And I think the most successful people, going back to the fact that I think, they're somewhat humbled, yet, extremely intelligent and curious as to always looking at, how can we do things better? And that there's a lack of arrogance that you see sometimes in some wine regions, that this is the way it needs to be done. And I think we're much more open here. We're much more spirited in the sense that we do listen to each other, and there's certainly individuals with opinions, but it's interesting because over the years, some of those individuals have actually started to make some changes in which we thought they would never go down that path. And so I just think there's an openness, generally speaking, to the industry.
And you see that more here in Oregon than you do in
Certainly.
Other places that you experienced.
Certainly.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I think the consumers that come see us, and there's been a tremendous amount of increase in tourism in this area, and people walking through our tasting room. And I think one of the comments we often hear is how friendly people are, and they're willing to share information. And there's this lack of pretense that you find, in many industries, or many wine industries here. I think it's more humble, we're here for quality of life. We're here because we think this is an amazing growing region, especially for Pinot Noir, but
and when you say quality of life, that has different meaning. Like people that live in San Francisco, downtown San Francisco, quality of life for them is different than what you're talking about. What's quality of life for you then?
For us?
For you, yeah.
Well, for us, I think it's enjoying the outdoors, the mountains, the rivers, the ocean.
Yeah.
Open, green spaces, even in downtown Portland. I think there's a connection to the outdoors and kind of to the natural world that it's extremely accessible here as opposed to a lot of other areas. Yeah. We live in Portland, yet, literally 45 minutes you're in the heart of Oregon wine country. An hour you're up on Mount Hood, an hour you're at the coast. So it's very easy, it's very accessible for us to enjoy what Oregon has to offer.
How does that, or does it, relate to actually making wine? Does that show up in the bottle?
I think that comes back to the balance we keep talking about. You're able to maintain balance and do what you enjoy and love, and you also can do what you enjoy and love as your occupation. We're not struggling to be able to get out and enjoy ourselves. We can just take off on Saturday and go get away from what we're doing here completely.
Yeah, you come back refreshed, focused. Like someone says. I think if you're overwhelmed and it's 24/7. Who was the gentleman that said that to prioritize over your family. I mean, not a quote.
Andre Telechef.
Telechef, yes.
Told me I would never be a great winemaker because I was too focused on my family, and I needed to prioritize either it's going to be wine or my family. He's 89 years old, and he's telling me this, and I've been raised to believe he is the foremost authority on what wine is all about, and I was just destroyed. I came home and cried, I think.
But disappointed,
Well, yeah.
Disappointed in him, or
Yeah.
I mean, because I was so excited to meet the man, and I was just so thrilled to be in his presence. And he says that to me, and I'm just. He didn't say it to any of the guys at the table. He said it to me.
I mean, he was so wrong. I mean, so wrong.
Yeah. Huh.
As far as we're concerned, and really, I mean, and I would think most people would agree.
At least in Oregon.
Yeah, well.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, how can you say that? 'Cause
Yeah.
Can you really?
There's great people in other. I mean, there's people I think that have balance in other regions. So again, we're generalizing. I hate to generalize, but
So,
generally speaking, yeah.
can you taste that? The thing that you're talking about, that quality of life. And I'm drinking a bottle of Oregon wine. Can I taste that in that Oregon wine? It's like, can I taste that quality of life? Like let's say I've got one from France, and I've got a Pinot from Oregon.
I don't know. I don't know if I go that far.
That's the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, when we ever so often, you pick up a wine review and you read it, and this happened to us in '88, and somebody made a comment about the wines lacked passion. And I'm reading this thinking, well, how do they know whether the wines they weren't passionately made or not passionately made? And it's just like, you can't put somebody else's life experience into your experience and know. I mean, the gentleman making the Burgundian wine may feel that this is quality of life. This is what quality of life is. It's such a personal experience. So
and I think too, we have to understand we're very pragmatic in the sense that, we don't bullshit a lot. So what you see is what you get, and I think there's this romance that's kind of hovers over the industry, whether it be Oregon or some other wine growing region, that's just not real. That's fabricated, and so we always kind of laugh at and handcrafted and all this stuff. There's just, as Lynn said, it's a fluffiness that. It's a marketer taking a product and trying to elevate it, not because of what's inside the bottle, but just what sells at that particular time and place and time too. I mean, region. I mean, it's all about marketing. So we've never really had to go down that. We've been fortunate that the quality has been so good, and we've always had the demand for the wine. We've never gone down that road, and so. When you taste Oregon versus Burgundy, I don't know. I mean, you could probably come up with some great descriptors, and again, going back, getting esoteric about the wine. But when it comes down to it, we're pretty straightforward, pragmatic. We love what we do. We're passionate in what we do. We want a quality product every year, and the focus is on just living. And how you interpret that is. Everyone interprets that differently. So, there you have it.
That's probably a good way to end it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. This is a real treat. And Ron, I should have had you come in right at the very beginning to make sure that Lynn was telling me the truth.
I should.
I asked him.
I had to make a couple calls.